Welcome to Home Again. This is a podcast about moving countries and how that changes a person inside. And today I'm joined by Miranda, who moved from the United States to Chile. And Miranda, I want to thank you for being with us today. And just before we begin, I just want to let you know that there's no pressure to have perfect answers as we're going through things. This is simply a space for you to reflect on your experience and to be able to share that in your own words. And so, as we start, let me begin at the beginning. Maybe to help people just get a sense of who you are, could you briefly introduce yourself?
Okay, well, great. Thanks for having me, Christopher. My name is Miranda. I am from Connecticut in the United States. And I am, excuse me, I am 47 years old. I am a permanent Chilean resident, but I'm still a U.S. citizen. I attended the University of North Carolina in the U.S. And I studied physics and math there, and so my I had a plan. I had a plan while I was in the university, and life just kind of put me in a washing machine and spun me around and said, "No, that's not how it's going to be." And I feel that life chose me to be an educator. And so that was, as I said, that was not my plan. My plan was to go into medical physics and biomedical engineering, and life said, "Nope, you're gonna be a teacher."
Yeah,
So
life's early detour.
yes, yes, but I'm so happy that it did, because it's very fulfilling, and especially with the students and the people that I've had the opportunity to work with, it's really been an amazing journey that I've had here.
And so part of that journey you're talking now, life already took you on a detour just from where you wanted to be career-wise, and you ended up in teaching. Obviously, it also took you on a detour of not staying in the United States, and you've ended up in Chile. Uh, Maybe you could just share a bit about that process. Was it a straightforward move? What was happening in your life at the time that got you to that point of realizing Chile was the place? Was it Chile directly? How exactly did all of that play out?
No, it was not Chile directly. Um, so when I was an adolescent, when I was in my second year of high school, I lived in Spain for that year, and so I spoke Spanish. And from that time, when I returned back to the U.S., I did a lot of volunteer work, and so I was always involved with the Latin communities, because there was a translation. There was not a large Spanish community in America, but there was a large Latin community, and so I took my Spanish speaking abilities. The only way that I could continue to practice Spanish was by participating with the Latin community, and so I did a lot of translation work. I did teach volunteer ESL classes. Every time I had an opportunity, I would go and participate in the Latin community, and and Mexican Spanish is vastly different from Castilian Spanish, or
Yes,
and
I've heard that.
and actually, I always had this connection and involvement with the Latin community in the U.S. And then I started to actually receive job offers. So I had the opportunity to travel as a translator. I took, let's see, I took trips into Mexico, into Nicaragua, into the jungle of Nicaragua on work trips. I got to go. I went with a company into Nicaragua, and we went. to cocoa farms, and we were
Oh,
looking for yeah, we were so it was a chocolate company, honey company, chocolate company, very interesting company.
Yes.
And so we went and they were searching for the best cocoa that they could find, and so we went into some of the cocoa plantations in Central America, and I started to I saw things there that impacted me. Mm, I had already known that things were not just about America or the way that America saw things, um,
That's right.
but I started to see the immense blessings that I had in America because I saw, especially in Central America, I saw what true poverty was, and it broke my heart. And so I knew that, I could see how fortunate America was. But when I went back to America, I realized that the people didn't really even realize that there was so much that was taken for granted. I'm gonna tell you. I'll tell you a story about something that was really
Oh, we love stories, so go for stories.
I've got lots of them. So one of the most heartbreaking things that I think that I've ever seen in my life was in Central America. I saw babies eating from the garbage,
Mm,
and wi
heartbreaking.
it really was, and so just because of, maybe because of the way that we had traveled and the places that we had been to. For example, we were in Managua, and we were at this, this festival, this street festival. Someone had bought me a soda, and the way that they serve soda is they serve it in a plastic bag with a straw in it, and then, they wrap it up, and so it's not a full can of soda that we think of, but instead like a maybe more of a sample. And
Oh,
so
interesting.
yeah, yeah, and so I was walking and sipping on this soda. I don't really even like soda. It was just a nice gesture of something that someone had done for me. And this little boy comes up to me and he starts pulling on my shirt and saying something to me. I couldn't even understand what he was saying to me. And he was desperate, asking me something desperately. And I said, "Well, what?" I looked at one of the people that we were traveling with who is native to Nicaragua. I said, "What is he asking me?" And he said, "He wants a sip of your soda." And I said, "He can
Mm,
have it. He can have it." And so I gave him this soda, but i- i- this is the level.
wow.
This is the level of imbalance. So something is even as simple
Indeed.
as a sample of a soda, and the little boy, as soon as I gave it to him, he pranced off. It was Christmas. And so
Yes.
his eyes lit up. It was the most amazing thing. And so it, it was on that trip that I was seeing things, that really opened my eyes to the privilege that exists in the US, and the lack that exists in many places.
Yes.
And and then I went back to the US, and maybe a year and a half later, I was working for a restaurant, and or it was like a catering company, and they would send us to different places. And ah, mm. and so this particular catering company sent us to a university, and we did like catering subcontract work. And so the
Yes.
director of the program at that university, I don't know if she had like some maybe some uh phobias against germs. I don't know what it was, but every single thing that had been cooked by the end of a shift had to be thrown in the garbage. And there were
Mm.
times that she would open up plates, tins that had not been touched, nothing had happened, and she would throw it in the garbage. And I was working with people who you could tell that they maybe were in a different socioeconomic situation where
Yes.
maybe it was more difficult for them to provide for their families, or um, they didn't have the means of the people that were being attended to in these
Yes.
events. And so they would have to throw the food away.
Mm.
And you could see that it just was so difficult to throw fresh food. It looked beautiful, salads that nobody had
Yes.
touched, and they would do these big extravagant presentations, and people were having to throw away this food. Um,
All while knowing their family, likely back home, has nothing.
yes, yes. And for me, it just this juxtaposition of thinking of it of one bag of soda and what that does for someone, and then having to watch people throw away completely fresh, perfect, food, untouched food. It was, I don't know.
And that becomes the eye opener, isn't it? Only when you get to experience different cultures do you suddenly realize what your culture takes for granted. And I know that's true for my experiences. I have traveled around being able to see the way and the things that people are short of and don't have, you don't give it two thoughts half the time. And there are people for the basics, basic bread and food, who don't have that. And we hear about it, but unless you physically see it, it doesn't have that same impact that there are really people that live like that. You'd traveled a lot around South America. You've already spoken about Nicaragua. I know the listeners aren't aware, but uh, I asked people to fill out a form, and in there you've mentioned Peru and actually
Mhm.
getting through Argentina. And through all of that, something started pulling you towards Chile. And that's where you ended up, so much so that you ended up returning to the US, you said, to fetch your dog, and then you came back and were hitchhiking, if I understood, through the Patagonia for a while. What made it, first of all, made you feel drawn to Chile, and what made you feel like that was the right time?
So I traveled through Central America while I was still in the university, and then I returned, and I finished the university. I applied for a master's program, working in neuroprosthetics, and I had done some internships. I had already kind of gotten my foot into the field, and in the end, there were several things that happened all at once. There was a devastating death in our family that happened right during my final exams in the
Mm.
university, and then right at the same time, just a couple of hours later, um, the guy that I had been dating broke up with me. He said, "No, this is just too much
No.
emotion for me." And I was going into my finals, my university finals. And at that time, he broke up with me at a Korean sushi restaurant, and attended
Of
by,
all places.
oh my goodness, we were at lunch, and and the people who owned the restaurant were actually Korean, And so, he breaks up with me and I'm crying into the sushi. And the Korean lady comes over and she's like, "Oh, is everything okay? Is everything okay?" Like thinking that I'm crying about the sushi. And it was
Oh.
it was not the sushi. It was not the sushi. It was my boyfriend. And so
Oh.
so and then I had to go and attend a funeral. Oh, they put the funeral right on the same day as my university graduation. Oh, it was
What? Oh,
yes,
no.
yes, it was no, it was brutal. It was brutal. And so I had been waitlisted for my master's program
Mm.
and so I had to get certain marks in order to get into the program, but that here I am taking my finals and this really intense time.
Yes.
I did not get the grades that I wanted during my university finals. So 2 weeks later, I was rejected from my master's program, and I said, "No, I think I'm done. I'm done. This
Yeah.
is not this is not working for me. I'm trying to force it here. I need a break." And so I went and I traveled in Peru, and I had always wanted to travel to Peru. Everything I had ever seen about Peru was always fascinating, and I had this call to go there for um years and years and years, and my mother had always told me she would forbid me. "No, you cannot go to Peru. They're gonna kidnap you. You're blonde. We'll never see you again." And in the end, I had made some friends from Peru, and they were my
Yeah.
neighbors while I was in the university, and that had transpired in the time that I had always wanted to go to Peru. And ironically, right at that time that I had graduated from the university, as soon as I finished, I my friend from Peru, she called me and she said, "We're going back to my family and I were going back to Peru. It's time for us to return. And so we are going to go." I said, "I need to go to Peru." And my mother had met
Oh.
her, and she really liked my friend. And so she said, "All right, well, if she's gonna
Oh,
be there."
brilliant.
Yes, if she's gonna be there. And actually, my friend called my mom and she said, "We are going to take very good care of her if she comes to Peru. So don't
That is
worry.
great.
Yeah, don't worry. We'll take very good care of her. We'll make sure she's safe." And that's exactly what they did. And so I spent 5 months in Peru, and then and I had met a lot just people from all over the
Mm.
world. Peru is a fascinating place to travel. And I had magical experiences there. Just I don't know if maybe some of your listeners have traveled there, and if they haven't, um, I I highly recommend it. It's one of the most incredible places on the planet. And
Yeah.
so and I was fortunate enough, to receive their full hospitality, in Peru. And so, I traveled in a way that I always had a contact. And so even though
Yes.
I traveled by myself, in Peru, and so I would always go from one place where I knew someone, and then I would go to a place. I would have a destination point and somebody who was waiting for me and somebody who knew. And so it gave me the it gave me the opportunity to learn how to travel in South
Right.
America, because I had been always, kind of in some very controlled tourist type environments, or in controlled business settings, and so it's a very different way to travel as a traveler or as a backpacker. And, I wasn't scared to go to Peru because I had always wanted to go, but nobody was going with me. I
Yeah.
was going to travel alone. And, even though my friends were there and checking on me, and they said, they helped me get my telephone established so that I was able to communicate. And it was it was certainly not what I expected. I expected to be going to a place where I was always deep in the jungle and no Wi-Fi connection, and
Yes.
there was Wi-Fi everywhere there. I was very
Oh, really?
surprised. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I was
Good to know.
surprised. Yeah. Mhm. So, so anyway, my time in Peru was really very nice, and, but then it did come to an end. It was time to go back to the US, and, I went back. The people who had really now I was a disaster when I was in Peru, like, emotionally, personally.
Yeah.
I smiled all the time. I smiled for the pictures. I went and, climbed the mountains and went to the restaurants and all, and everybody said, "Here, let's take a picture." And I smiled and, "Oh, everything's great." But inside I was just
Yeah.
d really having a very hard time, and I cried a
Mm.
lot. I cried every day. And, just from all of the things that had happened and had happened in a very compact way.
That's right. You had stepped from trauma really straight into this, and so you still had all of that swelling up within you and going around and
Yes, exactly, and I said, "Well, I'm gonna go back to the US and have a go at it, see if I can, figure things out for myself," but I really didn't want to. I didn't want
yeah.
to go back to the US. Something just didn't feel right about it for me. And so I did. I tried. I tried it. I went back to where my family was living. I returned to Connecticut, and I realized that it really wasn't going to be right for me because I had changed as a person through that time that I traveled. I had changed, and so to go back and try to fit into this mold of who I was supposed to be and try to have a go again at a master's degree and look for a way to fit back in, and it became very evident, that socially I was awkward,
Mhm.
even within
Yes.
my own country, or even within my own state, even within the place that I
Yes.
was raised, I just didn't fit there anymore. And so one of one of the things that really had struck me is even though I was in Peru, many of the people who I spent my time with were Chileans. And I had so much fun with them, and they were so compassionate and so patient, and they listened to me. They had these really interesting perspectives on things. I oh, I wouldn't even know where to begin, but one of the things that comes to me is, I had this rhythm of life,
Mm.
and everything was so fast paced. It had to be go, 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 go all the time. I would start early in the morning and go until late at night, and just be going. And for example, one of the places that I went, which actually it's to this day, it's my favorite place on this amazing planet, is, Huaraz, Peru.
Mm.
And
Yes.
so it's a place, there's a big expat community in this area, and, And it's Cordillera Blanca. So it's a place where there are these massive white mountains in the Andes Mountains,
Oh, beautiful.
very high peaks. There's an 8,000-meter peak there called Huascarán, and this just monolith mountain that comes still comes to me in dreams. It's so incredible, and I
Sounds
recognize it.
amazing.
It is. It is, and I recognize it. I can see a picture. I'm like, "That's Huascarán. I know that mountain. I know what that mountain is." And so actually what had happened is I was offered an opportunity to go and work at a hostel, in that area, and because I was traveling for such a long time, I needed to do some different things. I did some workaway programs, and I stayed with some people that I knew, but I mean, a 5-month trip is not really sustainable without having some alternate plans. If I went and
That's
decided
right.
to
Indeed.
stay in a hotel every single night, that wasn't gonna be reasonable. And so I went and I worked at a hostel, that was in that area, and there were a lot of Chilean people. So we went and we were climbing a mountain. I had the opportunity to go on this. There's a route. It's called Santa Cruz, and so it's where a lot of people go and climb. It's very well known in that area. And so I had the opportunity to go with one of the local companies, and climb one of the mountains. And I just wanted to rush everything. And one of the Chileans just stopped me, and he was like, "I don't understand why you have to rush through everything." I said, "Well, I have to go. He says, "What are you actually enjoying? You're just doing things. Are you
Yes.
enjoying your life?" It's like, I don't know. I haven't really even thought about it. Am I really enjoying it? I'm just doing it. I think I'm just on autopilot. I'm doing a lot of different stuff. It's very interesting, but am I really enjoying it?
Mm.
And that's just one example. They, there were so many enlightening moments, and I realized while I was in Peru that I really enjoyed the Chilean people. That I really
Yes.
I liked their sense of humor. Oh my goodness, they made me laugh so much all the time. And so I was always with a group of Chileans. And
Mm.
and so we stayed in contact, and when I went back to the US, my family had taken care of my dog,
Oh,
which I had a great dog. She was a border collie mix, and so, even at the time, she was 5 years old, and from the time I got her, I think it was maybe a dream of mine. I said, "Oh, someday I'm gonna take you to South America. We're gonna go and we're gonna travel in South America." But it was just one of these strange dreams that
that's
I
right.
that I had. I didn't really know how that was gonna be
Mm.
possible, or if it was gonna be possible. And then when I returned to the US, it was in that interim that I started to see that I went and I worked for this catering company, and I saw the waste, the excess, this big polarization of things that just didn't fit with me anymore. They
Mm.
didn't resonate with me anymore. And so I realized I couldn't be in it. And my family just saw me suffering.
Yes.
Because I was trying to fit myself into a square hole, and I
Mm.
I couldn't do it. I couldn't do
That's
it.
it.
And so they supported me, and they said, "We are gonna help you, take your dog, and if you wanna go to Chile, we'll help you with the way that you can get to Chile, and
Yes.
never ask us for anything ever, 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 ever again."
Yeah, we've got you there. Now you're on your own. And so you arrived in Chile then. You obviously went through a whole lot, and we'll speak a bit about that. But was there a specific moment in Chile that you realized, okay, this is no longer travel, this is my life now?
Yeah, I think immediately, because I showed up with my dog to Chile. I had
That's a
never been to Chile before.
and that's a unique process to be able to arrive somewhere and just feel, okay, this is my life now. This is where I am. But also in that, there are hidden realities. So I'm pretty sure even though you had arrived, you had experienced South America quite a bit, you knew you loved the culture and the people, and this was where you were going to be, there were hidden aspects that gradually came out. So as you look back, was there anything that you found yourself grieving that you maybe didn't expect to grieve through this process?
I think there are a lot of things, that I grieved. One of the things that I do miss about the US, is, maybe the collaborative, um ideas, for example, to work on a project with someone in the US. It's very people are very collaborative. They'll say, "Okay, yeah, let's work together. Okay, here I have this idea. What do you think about this idea?" And so this collective brainstorming is really nice about the US, and I miss that because maybe one of the things that happens here is people maybe will be a little bit more jealous, and they'll say, "Oh, well, I'm not going to give that person this information," or they I think that they take jealousy a lot more seriously. Um my stepson said something to me that was really interesting. He said that Americans do have jealousy. They are jealous, but they're jealous in maybe a different kind of way. Obviously, we're speaking in generalizations here. Um,
Yes.
so the culture here, the Chilean culture will say, "Oh, I'm jealous of you, and so I think you don't deserve that thing." Even it doesn't matter if somebody has worked for it, gets up at 5 o'clock every morning and works until 10 o'clock at night. The
Mm,
the
yes.
attitude will kind of be, "You don't deserve that because that's something that I want." Whereas the American type of jealousy is, "Oh, well, this person has that, so now I wanna do it too." And
Yeah.
so that's kind of the difference, that both cultures experience this envy,
Mm,
but they express it in different kinds of ways. But one of the things that I do miss is the collaborative behavior
mm,
that occurs in the US, and the restaurant culture. There are such
ah,
good restaurants in the US.
yeah. And it's sometimes these small flavors of home that are just not there that become the unexpected things, and you don't realize how it's ingrained into your day-to-day life, the
Mhm,
restaurants you visit, the just being able to work together with people, and it's the last things you expect are gonna be missed when you get into a new context.
mhm,
When
absolutely.
you moved to Chile, uh, was there ever a moment in Chile that you realized you felt like an outsider?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh,
Mm,
yeah.
thank you very much.
Absolutely. I mean, I right from the beginning, right from the beginning. So I came here on a tourist visa. I didn't have a job lined up. I didn't really know what direction I was going to be taking. I just knew that I really enjoyed the people and the culture and that I needed a new start. And so I thought that it was gonna be a great fit, but the Chileans that I had met were travelers, were a lot of them were rock climbers, mountain climbers, and so that is a very specific subculture.
It is.
And so I got my dog, and then I arrived to the city. And it turns out that the people in the city are not all rock climbers. They're not all these
Yes.
cool, laid back people. No, it's the city is uptight and people live with their problems in very condensed places, and it certainly was not what I expected. And now I
Yes.
had my dog with me instead of just a cell phone, and my tent. I still had my tent, but now I
Not the
had
best place to live in a city is in your tent. So
no, 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 it wasn't really feasible, and so, so I did start out in Chile. I started out and I stayed in a hotel, but I had to get that figured out very quickly because, as I said earlier, staying in a hotel is not sustainable. And at that time, I didn't know that I wasn't there weren't the same kinds of online groups that there are now. Or at least if there were some, but there weren't as many and they weren't as accessible. And
Mm.
so, as I said, I had to get it figured out very, very quickly. And now I was without a car. I couldn't take my dog on the bus. And so I did a lot of walking. I got to know the city on foot. And I had my dog out everywhere. But I would say just right from the beginning. And so, and the Chileans that I knew weren't necessarily in the city. They weren't in Santiago where I had
Mm.
arrived to. And so, they were, in different places, which ironically, they were concentrated in the place that I live now, but
Oh,
not I
interesting.
didn't yes, I didn't arrive here because of them. I arrived here because of my husband, and he and I met in Santiago, in the city.
Yes.
So, and they're not exactly, like, in my neighborhood. They're just regionally in this region. Um,
Yes.
and that's just kind of a coincidence that occurred. Or maybe, he and I joke, maybe it's destiny that we were
That's
gonna
what
end up together anyway. I don't know.
indeed. Yes.
Maybe,
But
maybe.
that's one of the interesting things that often hits people quite quickly when they move is that feeling of being an outsider.
Yes.
You think you're familiar with a place, but suddenly language is different. The way people do things is different.
Mhm.
Just the thought processes are different, and you realize that you are uh, on the outside there. But as I hear your story, that changes over time. It's not the permanent, and it may take longer for some people, but it is a process of adjusting. And I think that the thing is not to lose yourself in it, but to be able to transform and grow in yourself.
Yes.
And that's what I thought was interesting in the notes that you filled in, because what moving does is it brings about an identity and an inner shift.
Mhm.
And you mentioned that one of the relationships that changed the most for you through this whole process was the relationship with yourself. And
Yes.
you've touched on that a bit. Could you maybe describe what your relationship was like before and how that has grown and changed over time?
I think that before I was very outwardly projected. So I had maybe an external locus of control. I maybe tried to control circumstances that were around me, thinking that if I could control maybe my image, or um, if I could control the outcomes, then I was really in control. And I wasn't conscientious of it at the time. I just thought that that was the way that things were supposed to be.
Yeah.
And then when I left, um, I realized that people were going to look at me because I look very different from the people here. And I had a dog. So this was really, really kind of interesting. Um, and so I couldn't control the way that people were looking at me, or the way that people saw me. And it was so far outside of my paradigm because I was a world away. I couldn't possibly get any further away from what was in my sphere of control, and so I had to turn it inward.
Mhm.
And I had to start to make things, possible for myself, and for me as a person, and controlling the way that I feel, or the way that I respond or react to, circumstances,
Yeah.
instead of the way that people see me.
Mm. And that whole process of looking inwards pushes you to a place of needing to learn to depend on yourself more, to be able to look at your abilities, and that you are able to actually succeed, and you can achieve a lot more than you ever think you could. I think that's one of the lessons that I often hear people learning, is that self-dependence that grows, and how strengthening that is for them.
Absolutely. And, and one of the things that was very interesting is I was finding myself in circumstances where I definitely never thought I would be. I was recruited to work in the corporate world. I never imagined I would work in the corporate world. It
Yeah.
was Oh my gosh. I lasted a couple of years. I was like, "Wow, this is amazing." And I enjoyed it. I really enjoyed it, and I didn't ever think I would always in America, I said, "Oh my goodness, I would never move to a city and work at a corporation, work in a high-rise building." I worked at the World Trade Center in Santiago, and so I worked on the 21st floor, and then I was actually asked to go and work some of the partners from the company, and it's a Chicago-based company. Um, it's actually a law firm out of Chicago, and I was asked to go and work for some of the partners when they left the company and started their own firm. So I went, and I had a tenure that was much longer than I anticipated,
Yeah.
and so I found out things about myself, and then I started to, um have ideas as far as, like, business ideas. I started to learn about the business world, and, I said, "Hey, this might not be so bad. This maybe isn't
Yeah.
isn't what I thought it was going to be, and maybe there
Yes.
are ethical ways to do business." And
Indeed.
so and so, that was really very interesting. And so I started observing the startup community that's here in Chile, and it's very strong. There are because I guess because of the way that the economy works down here, there's a lot
Yes.
of external investment here,
Mm.
and so the business area is very well developed.
One of the other aspects that changes unexpectedly is just how relationships work. Some relationships fall away, some grow. How did relocation affect relationships for you? Either back home, obviously, you've spoken about new relationships that had formed in Chile and things with people. You met your husband.
Mhm.
If you want to just speak about that a bit.
I would say that I maintain a few close friendships back in the States, some family members, but I really I would say I pruned any of the extraneous relationships, any of the relationship and when I was in the university, I thought, "Oh, all of these relationships are so important. Oh, I need all of these people in my life." Um and when so after I had traveled to Peru and I went back to the US, there were so many relationships that I thought we will be friends forever. For the rest of I will be with these people for the rest of my life, and then there were these serious ruptures in the relationship, and some of them I was very surprised about.
Yeah.
And there were moments where I said, "Oh my goodness, you too? This relationship is gonna break apart? Oh my gosh." And that was another thing, but I guess when you have nothing to lose, because that was kind of what had happened, but when I was
Yes.
in Peru, I had this fullness of life, and then I went back to the US, and there had been several relationships and conflicts in relationships that had been put on hold. And
Yes.
by the time I got back to kind of take care of it when I was in a better personal space, um, there wasn't really anything there to repair, and it
Yes.
was it was surprising. It
That's
was
right.
surprising. So, and so it was almost like a clean break. I mean,
Mm.
obviously with my mother and my father and a couple of, I would say, maybe I probably maintain maybe 7 or 8, close relationships back in the US,
Yes.
but m more than that, no. My life
Again,
is
one of the realities of moving is that relationships will change, and those that are there for life, well, they will look for ways to connect. They will be the ones
Yes,
to call if they hear you in the country and they want to meet up and things, and those are
yes.
the ones to invest in. But I think often we're caught off guard when relationships fall aside.
Mm,
But I think the reality is, just as you go into this, realize that relationships will transform.
mhm,
Some will strengthen and
mhm.
some will fall away.
Yes.
And it's just to be able to also look at yourself and to say the reason they're falling away isn't because of you. It's just because of the circumstance and where you are in life and where they are.
Mm,
Because it's easy for us to turn that around. If you
absolutely.
looked at your life now, who are you now that you weren't before these moves?
Um, I'm I'm self-sustained.
Mhm.
Uh, I would say emotionally, financially. Um, I think that, um, I had always imagined or kind of fathomed that I was a certain person, and and then I found out kind of in a catastrophic way that I wasn't who I thought I was. And
Yes.
so then when I came here, I stopped trying to be that person.
Mm.
Um and ironically, maybe that's when I started being that person.
Yes.
So I think that might be uh, what has happened in this time.
Yes.
And now I'm a mother, and so and
And being a parent changes so
it
much. I know that.
changes everything.
Yeah.
So it changes everything, and it changes the focus. So
It
I'm
does.
not focused on, all of these extraneous relationships. I'm focused on my family, and I'm taking care of my family and making sure that my family is healthy and safe, and that we're doing well,
Mm.
and keeping my eyes on the prize in that respect, and keeping my focus there. That's where really things have started to flower, and things have started to bloom into what I want them to be. You know, I
Yes.
I was always a plant person in the US, and for example, I when I left the US, all of my plants died, and
Oh, no.
now oh my gosh, no, that was
Oh,
yeah,
sorry
all
to
right.
hear.
Yeah, me too, me too. I know. Me too. Oh, my mom had a black thumb. She was supposed to take care of my plants.
Yeah.
She killed them all. And so when I came here now, I have I I built a house around my garden. And so what I did is it so that's I think that's a pretty good example. Instead of having plants in my house, now I have a house around my garden. And
Yes.
so I've been able to construct the things that I wanted to construct, but
Mhm.
in a way that's, more substantial and more fruitful.
Yeah. And I think that's an encouragement for listeners is that the the process may be slow. There's a lot of internal work that happens, but in the end, the rewards are always there. Whether it works out for you living in that country or heading back home, growth happens internally that's unexpected. You
Mhm,
become a stronger person because of all that happens. And that puts you ultimately in a better place to be able to move in a different direction, to be able to build a life around your understanding of what's important to you.
mhm,
And I think that comes through in your story is just being able to see how even something that began with a traumatic situation of all of that difficulty in final exams and things, how that's ended up bringing you through this long journey around and through South America to this point where you can say, yes, I'm a mother, I've got a house, I've got a life that is built around things that are meaningful to me.
mhm.
And that's built through all of those experiences. And it's a beautiful thing for us to be able to highlight for people who are experiencing the struggles of being in a new community. Is that it doesn't stay that there is beauty in them too.
Me, one of the things that, because, now the international community in the place where I live has grown substantially. When I first got
Mm.
here, I was the only foreigner, and I stood out everywhere I went, and they would look at me and stare at me like, "What is she doing here?" And then and then, um, people have since kind of, I guess, well, especially in the community where I live, everybody,
Yes.
they're like, "Oh, there's Miranda," and I'm not the American, I'm not looked at like a tourist. They're like, "Oh, she comes in and she always buys this type of soap and this type of coffee, and she really likes the coconut chips, or any of the things that the products that I like." So I'm part of the community. I'm
That's
not
right.
a yeah, I'm not an outsider. anymore.
That's it. Yes.
And now, since then, there have been waves of immigrants that have shown up here, and we can always spot them. Okay, all right, and I'll sit back. Okay, where do you think they're from? What do you think's going on here? And sometimes when I speak to them, um, I especially the people who come and who have relocated here, I have
Mm.
to tell them it takes you're looking at a year, at least a year to firmly plant your feet. A
Yes.
at least here in Chile. I don't
Mm.
know about other places.
Yeah.
Um,
And I think that's helpful for people to hear that it's not from day one, it takes time. Part of my job as a life coach and what this podcast is trying to do is to allow people to tell stories because our stories encourage others. And so I want to ask, if you were to give this chapter of your life a title, what title would you give it and why?
there's a Spanish word, a Chilean word. It's a specifically Chilean word, and it's apera. And that's what people say to me. They're like, "Oh, you're so apera." And it's like, the meaning is it means dogged,
Mhm.
and basically it's like dogged determination. So
Yes.
apera is dogged determination. And so I wouldn't necessarily give the name give the journey that name. I think that's the name that the people in my sphere have given it. So
Yes.
that's one of the words that I have heard a lot is opera. And so throughout, and it's kind of ironic because I came here with my dog, and so they're like,
Yes.
"Oh, look at you and your dogged determination." And
Brilliant.
and so th- this is what I love about Chilean people. They just have this very sharp sense of humor.
Yes.
They're clever. And so I would say that my right now, I would call this chapter of my life, I would call it Miss, because that's what they call me. They call me Miss Miranda, Miss Miranda. Everything is Miss Miranda. Hi, Miss Miranda. How are you? I hear it all the time. That's what they call me. And so and so I enjoy that. I enjoy
Yes.
being Miss Miranda as the teacher.
Oh,
So
lovely. Thank you for sharing that. And Miranda, if I had to ask you one last question, and that would be if you had one sentence that would be an encouragement, what would you want it to be?
it's one of the things that helped me kind of to accept all of the colors of life. We don't look at a painting and say, "Oh, well, my favorite color is blue." And so in that painting, there can only be blue things. And blue is the only color that can exist in the painting. Maybe it's a blue flower, but it will have yellow, it will have brown, it will have black, it will have a lot of different colors that will create an image. And so if we look at the portrait of our lives, we can't think that it's just going to be one color or one emotion. It's only going to be positive things and positive days. All of the colors in life are going to create the portrait of what our life should be. And I think that it's very important to accept the good moments and the challenging moments, and recognize that they are all part of who we will be formed into, how we can shape our life experience.
And that was Miranda sharing her story. And thank you for your openness, Miranda, and all your honesty. And if something in this conversation connected with your own experience, you can find support at bravelyme.eu. Take care of what is shifting in your life, and I'll see you in the next episode.